Hi, welcome to This Reader's Life. My name is Stephanie, and welcome. If you are here for the first time, I'm glad that you're here. And if you're returning, thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed and you'd like to, that would be helpful. And again, I hope you enjoy the time that we spend here. This Reader's Life talks mostly about books and other blessings. Sometimes I have a tendency to talk about the weather just a little bit, probably because it's February, which I call the longest month in Kansas. It's just sort of a gray, long month. We got lucky and had a little bit of really nice weather earlier this week, and my husband and I got to talking about all the things we could be doing outside, and we decided to take off just for a couple of days and go to a little rustic cabin that's fairly nearby here. I think they have 6 cabins. It's at a place called Lynn Valley Park, and we really enjoyed ourselves for a couple of days. But now today it's gray and rainy, which is pretty much, if you say February, that's what you should expect here. And so I'm home. Happy Valentine's Day. Today is Valentine's Day, and I'm just going to talk about some random reads, a few things that I've read recently, and a few things that I am reading, and a few things that that I'm planning for the future. So hopefully, let's just jump in and see what we see. The first book, I finished 3 books in so far. Mid-month, February is where we are now, and I finally finished The Ivy Tree, which was one that I listened to. I think it would have read faster than it did for me to listen to it. It was about a 9-hour listen, and I think I might have read it faster, so I'm kind of going back and forth on the whole Audible idea, but you can get a lot of things done while you're listening. So if you have something mundane and boring to do, listening tends to work pretty well. But anyway, The Ivy Tree was written by Mary Stewart, and Mary Stewart is an author who was popular mostly from the middle 50s to the maybe the 70s, and a little bit past the 70s into the 80s. But she wrote a lot of romantic suspense, but she also wrote some historical fiction fantasy that was, she was fairly well respected based on, she wrote beautiful prose, and she told a good story. Her stories are not formulaic particularly. She was considered just maybe a cut above a lot of the other romantic suspense writers from that time. Writers like Dorothy Eden, who I also like, Phyllis A. Whitney, a few like that. She was considered just maybe a step above for her absolutely beautiful prose that she wrote well. She did beautiful settings in beautiful places. Her books, her historical fiction, fantasy type books, there were eventually 5 books, but there were 3 that are now called the Merlin trilogy, and it's about King Arthur and how King Arthur came to be King Arthur, and his mentor, or his sort of magical, mystical mentor, who was Merlin. And so those were wildly popular books, I think, in the 70s and 80s. And I've not read those, but I've sort of got them on my to-be read. But The Ivy Tree it was published in 1961. It was about, well, I'm going to read you the back of the book because it explains it the best, and I'm not going to go, it's a mystery, so you don't want to go into a lot of details about everything that happens. But this is what the back of the book says. It says, "Don't miss this utterly gripping tale of romance, ambition, and deceit from the queen of romantic mystery, Mary Stewart. Perfect for fans of Agatha Christie and Barbara Pym." I think I'm saying that right, P-Y-M. And then about the book, it says, "White Scar is a beautiful old house and farm situated in Roman wall country. It will make a rich inheritance for its heirs, but in order to secure it, they enlist the help of a young woman named Mary, who bears a remarkable resemblance to a missing White Scar heiress whose name is Annabelle Winslow. Their deception will spark a powder keg of ambition, obsession, and long-dead love." So it's almost gothic. The story itself is. It's probably not considered a gothic romance, but it's definitely romantic suspense. I enjoyed it a lot. She's a good writer. The stories are not outside the realm of something that could be plausible or possible. They don't have um, silly, silly, easy endings and things like that. She's a really good writer. The setting is absolutely beautiful, in Roman wall country, which is it's in England, and I'm sorry, I don't know exactly where it is, but there is some archaeology in the story. There are some horses in the story. It's very well written, and a it has a satisfying ending, which is always important to me. So that is the Ivy Tree, and that's what I thought about that. Um, and then the next thing I did is I said I wanted a genre jump, and I've been trying to read some poetry. And I've kind of decided to read as much of Billy Collins' um, poetry as I can, and I've read a little bit about him. He was born in 1941. He was raised in New York. He was the poet laureate from 2001 to 2003 for the United States. And his poetry is kind of a good, well, I feel like it was a good um, starting spot for me, or starting point, kind of a jumping in spot for poetry, because he is very accessible, and that's part of why he's so loved. He's very approachable and popular. His there's a lot of humor in his poetry, but his poetry is also much deeper than maybe you might realize on that first read. And I've realized more and more that if you're going to read poetry, you probably want to read it and read it again and then read it some more. So that's how I feel about his poetry. I've read several of his books, but I've chosen two that I'm going to read out loud, and they're both from it's sort of an anthology of his poetry, of his different books, but it's Sailing Alone Around the Room, and he has some new poetry in there, and some of it is selected from other publications. But I will read those. I'm just going to do two. I tried to find two that weren't too horribly long, so you don't have to listen to me if I don't do a good job. The name of this poem is Dharma, and it's by Billy Collins. And so here we go. The way the dog trots out the front door every morning without a hat or an umbrella, without any money, never fails to fill the saucer of my heart with milky admiration. Who provides a finer example of a life without encumbrance? Thoreau in his curtainless hut with a single plate and a single spoon, Gandhi with his staff and his holy diapers. Off she goes into the material world with nothing but her brown coat and her modest blue collar, following only her wet nose. The twin portals of her steady breathing followed only by the plume of her tail. If only she did not shove the cat aside every morning and eat all his food, what a model of self-containment she would be. What a paragon of earthly detachment. If only she were not so eager for a rub behind the ears, so acrobatic in her welcomes. If only I were not her God. I love that. It's so true of dogs. They are so self-confident, except for that they're not. But I love that poem. And let's do the next one, which is, and I like this one very much too. It is Introduction to Poetry. I ask them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say, drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out. Or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. And I feel that way about poetry. I feel sometimes like I have to beat it with a hose in order to truly understand it. And the thing that I've loved about Billy Collins' poem, well, first of all, I feel like he understands me. If that makes sense, I feel like, yeah, he gets what's difficult about poetry, but he also sort of makes fun of the idea that that's even necessary. And so I think that poems either resonate or they don't. And if they don't, that's all right. And I also have one other poem that I'm going to read, and it's a little bit longer than either of these, And this comes from a book called A Heap of Living. It was written by Edgar A. Guest. And Edgar A. Guest he comes from a much earlier time, around World War I and into World War II, but he was known as the people's poet. And it's Edgar A. Guest. And this is one, he's very, his poem is very homey, and it's more of a sing-song, it's more metric, it rhymes. And so this one is one that I thought is kind of good for the time that we're in right now, even though it doesn't have anything to do with the time that we're in. The other fellow. Are you fond of your wife and your children fair? So is the other fellow. Do you crave pleasures for them to share? So does the other fellow. Does your heart rejoice when your own are glad? And are you troubled when they are sad? Well, it's that way too in this life, my lad, that way with the other fellow. Do you want the best for your own to know? So does the other fellow. Do you stoop to kiss them before you go? So does the other fellow. When your baby lies on a fevered bed, does your heart run cold with a silent dread? Well, it's that way too where all mortals tread, that way with the other fellow. Does it hurt when they want what you cannot buy? It does with the other fellow. Do you for their comfort yourself deny? So does the other fellow. Would you wail aloud if your baby should die for the lack of care you could not supply? Well, it's that way too as he travels by, that way with the other fellow. So anyway, I thought Edgar A. Guest and Edgar A. Guest was not the poet laureate. He was the poet laureate of the state of Michigan, but not, I don't believe that they had United States poet laureates at that time, and I might be wrong. But he is enjoyable and super simple, and I have 4 of his little books that are from my family's collection, and they actually have my aunt's name on the inside of them for 1937, Christmas Day. So she must have received these as gifts. So there's that. The other book, and that's what I've done for poetry right now, and I do plan to do more, but I'm not sure where I'm going to go from here. I definitely would like to read some that require maybe a little more thought, and also just read more about the process of poetry and the different types of poetry. I haven't done any of that since, golly, a class in college, and it's been quite some time ago, and that's something I plan to do. The other book that I read was a novella, Daisy Miller by Henry James, and many people have read this book. It's very popular. It's on a lot of reading lists, both for high school and college. And the book takes place in 1879, or it's written around 1879, and it's about a young girl from America who goes on tour in Europe with her mother and her younger brother, and her family is from America. They have lots of money, but not lots of culture. They're new money, and it's sort of about the attitudes and the clash of the refined European culture and what they consider acceptable and American culture, and the way that Americans behave as being a bit rough or not very couth, and I think the story is about her kind of seeing 2 different men at the same time. The story is told through the eyes of a gentleman named Frederick Winterbourne, and she sees him and goes out with him unaccompanied, and then she goes out with an Italian gentleman unaccompanied, and she doesn't seem to have while everyone else is sort of speculating about her reputation, it doesn't seem to bother her at all. And at one point, Winterbourne, the part that I think I liked the most was when Winterbourne he defends her to others, but he's also shocked by her behavior, and he calls her a flirt. And I love it that she agrees with him wholeheartedly. And she says, of course, did you ever hear of a nice girl that was not a flirt? And I love that because in a way it's true. The flirting isn't the problem, it's the follow through. And so she is a nice girl. There's no follow through. She's just a flirt. And it made me think about about that a little bit differently than I probably would have thought of it when I was younger had I read this book. So I enjoyed it a lot. I think it's worth reading. I would recommend that anyone, it's a great starting place for Henry James. I'm sure it's easy to understand. It's not very long. And the language is easy to understand. So I enjoyed that a lot. So those are the three that I've read, and plus Edgar A. Guest. I've read that in the past, and his poetry is always fun to read. It's sort of uplifting when you're feeling down. What I'm reading right now is I'm reading Surprised by Joy by C.S. Lewis, and it is sort of an autobiographical story of his journey to his childhood and his eventual journey to faith. And I'm enjoying it very much. I think it's a hard read. He's a good writer. He doesn't dumb anything down for the reader. He is highly intelligent. He writes um, what I always call dense sentences that I have to read more than once. I'm enjoying it. It's beautiful writing. I'm enjoying it very much. That's the thing. If I were going to say the thing that I like about the book is that he doesn't dumb things down, and the thing that I would say I'm not crazy about is that he doesn't dumb things down, because sometimes you just want it to be easy. But I'm enjoying that, and I'll say more about it after I've finished it. But I'm really enjoying it. The other book that I'm reading right now is Every Day I Read, and I'm going to say the name, and I'm probably butchering it. It's written by a Korean woman. Her name is Hwang Bo-rum. And the book talks about that she, for a while, she had sort of forgotten to read, and she wanted to be a reader. She forgot it because she graduated from university. She passed all of her tests. There's a lot of Korean culture that has caused her to concentrate much more on science and mathematics and technology, and her desire to read, and how trying to decide how to get back into reading is sort of what this series of essays is about. I'm not finished with the book, but probably one of my favorite things that I came across, and each essay is about something. Some are about read the classics, some are about read short books, read long books, read every day, read audible books, read out loud to yourself. She has all kinds of different essays that are very different to read. One of them that I enjoyed so much was where she talks about a book bar, and that it is a place to go to read, and to go where other readers are reading, and either to talk with them or not talk with them, but that the sign on the door of the bar is solo readers welcome here. And this is in South Korea. And it made me think, I want a bar. It made me long for a bar like that. It's like, I want to go someplace like that where I can have a glass of wine and read some comfy and comfortable, and but be around others, and maybe hear snippets of conversation, or hear someone talking about a book that you could talk about with them. There's something so warm and comforting about that. I think that it's something that I would really enjoy. But anyway, when I finish that book, I'll let y'all know what I thought overall. But right now I'm really enjoying it. And I believe she's written one other book that is something about a woman who in Korea who buys a bookstore, or begins running a bookstore, and I'm interested to read that too. But for right now, that's what I've got as far as what I'm reading. That's what I've got as far as what I've read. And then also, I for the future, well, later this week, I'm going to do Filmtastic February tag, and I'm looking forward to that, because I love the idea of movies, well, books to movies, and it also asks a question about movies to books, which I'm really kind of having to do some research on. But anyway, that's what I plan to do. I've also looked at I re-signed up for Audible because they were having a special, so I am subscribed to Audible now, and I went back through all my old books that I ever bought, and it was all while I was working and listening to books at work. They've all come back up, and I found I think it's about 80 books that I either never finished or never started. They're books that I saw a good deal on, that I bought thinking, well, I'll read that someday. So I may be listening to a lot of Audible books, because that's a lot of books on the shelf, and so that's some that I'll definitely be trying to catch up on, and I made myself a long list of how long each one was, and I could probably read for many, many hours. Anyway, until we meet again, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, be kind to the planet. Have a blessed day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.